My clock just turned 6:30 and I see that we have a quorum. So I will call a meeting of the City Council, City of Hillsboro to order. First item up on our agenda is approval of the consent agenda. And first item there is vouchers totaling $189,250.26. Did everyone receive copies of the vouchers? Any questions, comments regarding vouchers? Okay, and the second item is minutes for our April 18, 2023 meeting. Did everyone receive copies of the minutes? Were there any questions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, I'd accept a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
I'll make that motion.
Councilman By moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilman Riggers seconds. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item up on the agenda is our first public comment opportunity. I see we do have members of the public here. Are you here to address the council?
Yes.
Okay. We'd need you to come and move the podium out here. And please state your name and what you want to talk to us about.
Okay, all right. Okay, my name is Renee Flett, and I am here with my neighbor Connie Weens to address the canal behind your home and our home. Since we moved in 2016, the conditions have deteriorated significantly. It's a lot shallower than it used to be. And there are trees that are starting to grow into power lines. And in the middle of the canal, there are also trees starting to grow. So we just wanted to come and address that before it becomes an even more expensive project with much more mature trees. And yeah, and we are concerned too about the flooding capability. If water can't flow, because the bridge down on Juniper still has debris from 3 years ago. That is blocking flow as well. So Connie, did you have anything else?
It needs to be dredged out because the water cannot flow and it stands in there, and that's a big mosquito problem. Because it can't drain out. It just has to sit there until it totally dries up.
And I do have pictures from last fall before everything died. I mean, it was just growth all up, and I'm sure you've seen it too, Lou, but
Yeah.
it's getting pretty bad. So
I worked out there last spring. And I took down some saplings myself, cut them down and cleaned a lot out until my allergies started bothering me. And I have a feeling I'm about the oldest person in this room. And if I can do it, I think the city can do something about it. There only is one person that may be older than me, and I don't know your age, but I know I'm almost.
I'm 82.
You're 82, you're 2 years older than me.
so okay,
Okay,
that's
well,
all
thank you.
came for it, so.
Is there any questions by the council?
I think my question would be more like, we did have this done, but has it really been like prior to 2016?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, it was,
yeah, many years ago.
Barney's son, Mason, actually was the last one involved in cleaning it out. So that was a summer job, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was a summer job, yeah. It needs it.
Yeah.
I had a work person that had to do some time for the court. So I had him clean the whole thing out one time too. And I think it's only been cleaned out a couple times since
Right.
I can remember.
Yeah, the electrical department's gonna go along and where the power lines are, and trim back the trees there. And we have talked about, we have to rent some equipment in order to clean that thing out, because you really need an excavator to do it. We don't have anything that can really get down from the top and get into it. So we'll have to rent something to do that, but we do have it on the list to do hopefully this year, but we were trying to do it earlier this year, but we were doing stuff at the spray part instead, so we haven't really gotten to it, but yeah, that's the plan. We're hoping to get to it in this.
Probably should have been cemented when they put it in there, but I don't think they want to spend the money.
Yeah, it's,
But even on the cement though, it takes some work. You gotta still-
yeah, scrape it and maintain. Darren and I had a conversation about this
Yeah,
too.
and what really needs to happen, and we look at it as part of the CIP, when we get to the stormwater piece, is it really needs to be cleaned out for about a quarter mile outside of town. There's so much sediment on past town that it just backs up and starts slowing stuff down in town. As soon as you slow water down, the sediment can settle out, and all of a sudden you just just progressively backs up. So unfortunately, part of the solution is not necessarily completely in your control. You can clean out right to where your city proper or the city, turns into non-city property. But then it goes out across a pasture and it's not your property, not really something you can control. I mean, you have to get landowner permission to go in there and start cleaning out and digging. So I don't know if there is another solution other than cleaning it out.
Yeah, other than-
Now the trees, that's a different thing,
Right.
but I'm talking about the sediment that
Right.
really now is backed up. I think the last time we were down there was last August or September, really looked at it and there's sediment probably 6-8 inches deep, probably a couple 100 feet back up into the concrete now.
Yeah, it's a mess and don't doubt that.
Just to comment on trimming the trees, when you have a cluster of 10 or 15 saplings right together, I think they need more than just trimming. I think they need to be.
We're gonna take them out. Yeah.
You're gonna take them out,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep. Yeah, because we don't want to have to come back and do it. And I get it. I'm gonna lose trees on my backyard too, because I live right there too, but. They just need to be taken out because they are growing up into the power lines and that's the solution is just to clear cut that out. And
Part of it's nice because it's privacy, but
Right.
at the same time, it's a problem.
it's a problem, yeah. And there's a couple of those thorn trees and they're not great. So, yeah, we need to get in there and take care of that.
Do we have a plan to?
Yeah, we do. Just have to have the time and again, we have to rent some equipment to do the excavation piece where you're dredging it out. You have to get back there and then you have to wait till it's dry enough to get the equipment back there because it's pretty substantial.
Might
And
help
that
the golf
easement is,
course out a little bit too.
yeah,
Flow.
it flows through there. It gets going and
That
doesn't
one year
get
it took
going
the
out.
bridges out from the golf course, so.
yep. That was last year, yeah. So it's something that needs to be done. There's not a great solution for it. When they put it in, they should have done it a little differently, but we don't have,
Yeah.
we don't have that opportunity now.
Like I said, it really needs to be cleaned out down. If the stuff downstream were able to clean out, it would keep this flowing better
mm,
and wouldn't give it a chance to settle out. So I think that's the part that gets kind of.
Yeah, we'll have to get, I think Brent Barkman owns all of that.
Just- I know a guy.
Which I'm sure he would be willing to do it. We'll just have to coordinate with him on that because that's big equipment on his property. Ends up being kind of a thing, but yeah, we do have a plan we know about it. We're hoping to get it all back to a reasonable condition.
And ultimately,
relatively
it's the
soon.
same drainage way that drains Willow Glen and Carriage Hills.
Mhm.
They all end up in the same place down there, just
Mhm.
out in the pasture, not where this canals come out and come together. So
Mhm.
it would benefit that whole part of town if we could really get it cleaned out. But
I just like to see it done before I die. It's the only thing. It's the only thing I might ever know.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
Is there any other public comment? Anybody else would like to address the council? Hearing none, we'll move on to, I think we're going to table item D. Is that correct?
Yeah, Mr. Johnson called and said that he wouldn't be able to attend tonight to do a conflict.
Okay. So we'll move on to item E, and I see that Mr. Neufeld is present from EBH to present our capital improvement plan. Darren?
so unless you want a 4-hour meeting, I'm gonna give you the condensed version of everything, let you guys, re-look back through all this that you got sent yourself, but I will pass these out because this is the condensed version. If one when we get left, I'll snag one back.
If you wouldn't mind,
Oh, yes. Yeah. I
Thank
will.
you. just because I asked nicely.
You did.
Thank you.
I'll comply.
Thank you.
Okay, so what you saw in your report, we reiterated with the street one, which we kind of presented to you last fall. And then in the report that I sent you, and I do apologize, we didn't realize until after we sent it to you, we forgot to include the stormwater section. So it includes airports, sidewalk trails, water, sanitary sewer, and then it also stormwater was supposed to be in there. So I will get that included and send back another revised copy. So this doesn't have stormwater on it either. That's when I realized we left it out. what I did here is it's a two-sided piece of paper. So the side that has the colors next to each other, that is broken down into by system. So the side Lou just flipped to where the colors are all intermixed is broken down by year. So basically what we came up with, and we met with all the staff within each department, we met with that a couple times. So I'll start up with streets. Those three priorities haven't changed since what we presented to you last fall. In the street section, the one thing Dale and I, when we talked, we did not go ahead and do, you'll see when we get down to some of the other sections, we kind of put annual maintenance type items into the other sections. Yes, Dale does have a plan and a program to, of course, crack seal every year, but also chip seal a certain amount of streets. That's not shown here. Since I didn't update it from last fall on that section, when we do a future revision to this, we'll probably add that in. So you'll actually get a better capture. Our goal with this, and what Matt kind of asked for, was to be able to throw something out in front of you that, number one, blows your mind because of the total dollars we're looking at over a 10-year period, but also to give you an idea year to year, some of those annualized maintenance costs and the way all the departments and infrastructure systems kind of stack up with each other. So what you see when you get down to so those three city projects on the streets, we still have estimated about 3.1 million. And you'll see those are spread out for over the next 4 or 5 years. Airport, we need to do one project, which that one, we're going to apply for a KDOT aviation grant later this summer. That'll be 90% of that $167,000 cost. So your actual local cost on that one will actually only be $17,000. If we get that grant. So, but you can also see that crack seal about every 3 years when you go out and crack seal the runway, which we've been doing when Dale does the streets. You get on into the sidewalk trails. So what we did there is Dale kind of requested, hey, let's look at in this capital improvement planning, throwing in a project basically every year for about $15,000 to go out and pick a section of sidewalk or sidewalks, different pieces and parts that need to be replaced because they've either, tree roots have shoved them up or they're just deteriorated and gone. So we put in there $15,000 a year between 2023 and 2030 to go attack that. Now, it's going to vary, of course, by cost as to how much that really gets us done. But 15,000 does roughly about a block. That's going to give you a rough idea right now. By the time we have driveways where we got to thicken them and put wire in it, it doesn't get as far as we'd like it to. But that's roughly what we're looking at. We also then included the projects, which the priority of the projects for there were 6, and we came up with those 6 a couple of years ago, and we really didn't change them much when we had to formalize the sidewalk trail. Its own separate plans. We could apply for a couple of those grants. The top priority of sidewalk trail is the 3rd Street from basically Main to Adams. The second one is the Orchard connection, basically from the pharmacy to Sonic. The third priority was then connecting those two via the business park. So kind of a loop that runs through kind of by Midway Motors and then ties into 3rd Street at about Washington, Jefferson range. The fourth one was D Street, finishing the widening, and the one little section of D we're missing that connects the pool basically back to Ash. There's one section still missing, and then part of it's only 4 foot wide, so we wanted to widen that other section, so it's 8 foot going all the way across there. Priority 5, which is down there in the 2028 year. Priority 5 is doing from basically the swimming pool down to the ball fields. And then priority 6 was just a gravel loop around the ball fields, just to give that a loop down there. Those projects were kind of derived because there were some other grant programs, that made them eligible, and we've applied for those over time. We just haven't ever gotten them yet. Moving on to the water, we have 2 major projects left that will pretty much knock out the rest of the distribution system that are having issues. And the first one, Morgan kind of broke this up into the stuff we're really having a problem with, which is the near-term project. We listed it as 2024 and 2029. Those years are not set in stone. We just had to kind of put a year to it to get something into this plan for you. But that near-term project is 3 streets, 8 blocks, roughly 1.2 million. And then on the later project is 18 streets, 55 blocks, 6.8 million. So, in the report, if you pull up and look at the report, and this is what I didn't pull up tonight unless you want to see it, we actually have maps that show you what streets we're talking about on all of this stuff, whether it's the sidewalks or the streets or the water. So if you want to see which ones, or if you wanted to talk about them, I could have Matt pull them up, but I just didn't hear.
Well, they're not bookmarked, Aaron. Yeah, that's a C minus. You gotta bookmark your pages, man. Easier to find stuff. There you go.
That's the
trail.
trail, that's the trails right there. So you can see up on the top end, the 1, 2, 3. 1 is Third Street, 2 is the Orchard, 3 is the connection between the two going kind of through the business park. Down at the bottom left is 4, 5, and 6, and that's the 4 is D Street, 5 is the out to the ball fields, and the 6 is the loop around the ball fields. So, and mostly that was derived, like I said, because the grant programs that were kind of out there that we could get funding through. And so we kind of picked and choose spots for a sidewalk trail system that would, qualify. I went ahead and showed on this particular map too. You'll see the two we've already done. They're kind of in that pink, the one right across the middle. Well, yeah, the first one out there that Matt's highlighting now runs from Main Street, of course, out to the hospital. That was through the KDOT program. And then the other one is the Safe Routes to Schools, which basically runs down Grand all the way from the west side of town in front of the high school and then on over the grade school.
Is number 1, that's over by Casey's and.
Well, it starts at Ash and runs on the north side of Third all the way over to Adams.
Cause I know we're meeting to put the new fire station
Yes.
in.
That's not to say we couldn't switch sides of the street.
Okay,
It was just drawn this way to have it in that corridor.
right.
Because that's where we knew we needed to connect.
Okay,
There's already a sidewalk running north-south on Ash and also on Main, so we
Okay.
need to get those two kind of connected.
Okay.
To give an interconnection.
that's good.
But yeah, we could do a switch over, stay on the south side. Until we got on the other side of Main or even over to Washington. So, the next, well, I guess.
When we
keep going. Oh, go ahead.
Well, if we talk about that, like, so you had one. And to me, some of the reason why we were doing one was also that was going to be developed. That has not happened.
Correct.
So did that change our opinion on it being a number one, like the first thing we would do? I get connecting Ash and Main, that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
But after that, I don't know that it makes a ton of sense to keep going east.
I hear more requests for number 2, which is the Orchard Drive
Yes.
piece.
I agree with you too. And the other plus about one is when we redid that street, when we redid Adams, we
Yeah.
put that nice white sidewalk in.
Yeah.
So all the way from Tabor, all the way up to Third is a good sidewalk, and then it just stops.
Mhm.
So really, if you're using that right now, you get up to Third and you have to use the street to get back over to another sidewalk system.
Right.
That's why one came into being.
Gotcha.
I'm not opposed that right now, 2 would probably be a higher use.
Mhm.
And if that's when we get to another grant project, a grant application, if we want to switch those priorities around and go for 2, I totally would concur with that
Yeah. Okay.
desire.
I'm agreeing, yeah.
2 makes a lot of sense.
So we have, well, since I've been mayor anyway, we've applied for grant funding over and over and over again and continue to be denied. What is it? What is it? They don't like the cut of our jib? What is it?
Well,
What
I've
is it?
heard they've said it has something to do with who's mayor, but. that's the feedback. No, so thank you, Lou, for asking that question, because what we do every time we have any grant application that we turn in and for anybody in the state and it's not awarded, we get a hold of the person that did the reviews. And I asked that exact question. What was it that kept this application from passing the funding line? And I can never get a straight answer on your projects as to anything that's technical. It's purely, it just wasn't quite a good enough project to make the line.
And
there's not a reason
that's
why.
undefinable then.
Yeah, because what we've done every time is we've tried to hype it up a little bit more. Okay, maybe they need to see the amount of businesses out there. So we made sure we quantified how many businesses are out there and the types of businesses, so that what we were connecting made sense, you know, if we're looking at number 2. If we're looking at, say, down on D Street, which we haven't applied for yet, but you know, it'd be a matter of, okay, how do I re-quantify that that's the only thing for kids to get from the pool to all of the residential? We do look at that and we adjust the application every time. So I can't just say, hey, it's because of. I wish I could.
Yeah.
I wish I had a reason, there's something to fix. It's the same reason when we look at the C-CLIP projects on KDOT, why haven't they funded fixing their own stuff when you guys are applying for it? You know, the entrance to Sonic and how that's falling apart, and on Ash, that island that's falling apart. They say, well, yeah, it's a great project every year. In fact, they're coming Thursday. We're gonna look at it again Thursday. New people, I guarantee they're gonna say, oh, yes, it's falling apart. We need to get money on this. If we don't get funded again, it's gonna be like, Joe's in support of it. The district engineer's in support of it, yet when it hits the review committee in Topeka, it just doesn't quite float high enough to make the line. So. Yeah, if you scroll on down,
Water.
it'd be that's street. So you can go ahead and go past streets unless you want to revisit it. The next section should be water. Yeah. It's real tough to see. This is your existing system, so it's all color coded by size and type. If you scroll down just a little bit, it will pop up. There we go. Okay, so the dark blue lines, which there's only 3 of, are that near-term projects. You can see over there on, I think it is Birch
Street.
Birch from Grand down to D. There's a little piece up there that goes from basically the old water tower back out to Ash. And then over on Adams, the same stretch we're applying for on the street from First down to B.
Those all 8-inch?
Those all 6.
6.
They're all 6. Just 6 that are in not great repair.
Gotcha.
All 3 of them. Well, I take it back. The one going to the tower might be an 8. The old tower, it might be an 8. But the other 2 bigger ones are 6. The lighter blue lines then are the ones that are on Morgan's far term project list. And those are the one that's kind of, we're not sure of because we don't have great records. We've highlighted D Street all the way across town. There's pieces and parts of that one as well as a couple of other these other little 1-block stretches that city records are kind of conflicting. Some of it shows that some of that's been replaced. And every now and then they'll dig up and they'll find a piece of PVC, and then 10 feet over, they'll find another piece of old cast or older pipe. So if we decided to throw D Street into a project, we'd do a lot more exploration before we define exactly what pieces of D Street really needed to be in that project. Right now, we're showing the whole thing. As well as there's 2 other single blocks in this that are that same way. There's a chance that some of it's been replaced and we wouldn't have to do all of it. For planning purposes, we just showed it all. And then it's broken down into the 2 priorities here, so we can see the dark ones, and then on the next photos, you scroll on down, will be the lighter colored ones. Yep. Right above it was the list of streets, so. But there's 2 water projects right now, we valued at about $8 million to do those 2. But you're talking 63 blocks.
2 blocks of main.
Yeah, it's
a lot of main.
And roughly that's only about 20% of your entire system.
So that's a total replace.
Yes,
on all
those
of
are
that.
total replace on all those. Yes. Yeah, it's not a repair type thing. It's a replace it all. So then we move on to the sanitary sewer system. Of course, here is the system. Go ahead and scroll down a little bit and we'll get to the projects. Right here. Okay. So the first set of projects are the pink ones. So you see up there, basically between Main and Ash, and then the alleys on Cloron over to Jefferson. And then there's a 1-block stretch on 2nd Street that goes over and then back up the alley between Jefferson and Madison. Everything you see on these slides is lining projects. So this is not a take it out and replace. This is us just line the inside of it. And then there's that stretch down on D between Floral and Birch. Morgan, has all of this that's highlighted on both of these projects has been cambered and cleaned, so they're very comfortable with, yes, these are the next priorities. You can see there's only one manhole, and that's that orange circle up there, right in front of where the new fire department would be. It's the receiving manhole for the force main that comes from Alco, and so it's been deteriorated due to a lot of use. And so it gets rehabbed in next year's project. Starting then, what's not shown on the map is we've said, okay, we have all these other projects, like, so in 2023, which is the pink, is 15 blocks. In 2024, which is the orange, is 10 blocks. And then you get out in further years, we said, hey, out around 2029, and then we actually projected on even further in the report. But for purposes of what you see on these colored sheets I gave you tonight, only went to 2030. So in 2029, we said we're going to do another 11 blocks. Morgan feels like right now that if we do in that 10 to 15 blocks every 5 years, we'll stay ahead of the lining and what needs to be done. Now, right now, there's a list of about 35 manholes total that need to be rehabbed. But they said those are not as bad as the lining of the lines. So she's put those more in the out years on the manhole rehabs. We can still survive with those. Those have more to do with the I&I issue, the infiltration issue, than the fact that they're causing us problems.
So they're too low.
They leak, the rims leak, the tops are bad, or the sides have enough porosity, for lack of a better way of saying it, that water can actually, groundwater can come in through the rings. So by putting that coating, basically spray coating the inside, we can keep that rainwater from infiltrating in from the ground. So that's your sanitary sewer. Now, the other thing we did build into the sanitary sewer on this list, you'll see we've scheduled point repairs of about $10,000 for a couple years here straight until they kind of get caught up. And then like every 5 years, we've set up one of those point repair programs. But then the video cleaning, we went ahead right now and said every year 25,000. That is very, very aggressive. I think once they do it here this next couple of years, they won't need to do the video on every foot of pipe every year. It's just more the cleaning that needs to be done on a routine basis. And right now they're set up to do a 10-year schedule. So in 10 years, they would video and clean every lineal foot of sewer in town. That could probably be backed off and just do cleaning every 10 years and just video when we think there's a problem line, especially once you get them lined. You wouldn't have to video them all the time. So that 25,000 per year is probably an aggressive high number, but you'll see then that whole sanitary sewer program is a little over $1 million for the 10-unit piece. So what I did on the backside, the one where the colors are matched, I said, okay, hey, now just take a look at it by year. And you can kind of see what the planning per year is for all these infrastructure. To throw in the one I missed and didn't include in your report, which I will get to, on the stormwater. Dale and I sat down, we drove around a couple of times. There's multiple things that really need to be worked on. One of them that came up was the issue from earlier this evening, that south ditch going south out of town. Another one is the pond there in the park upstream from that same location. The bigger pond has been dredged in the past, but only partially. So finishing dredging it and looking at the potential of eliminating the little pond. You know, is it really necessary? Is it helping or hurting our system? Then as far as storm drains, actual pipes, we have two spots that we need to, one half block we need to replace down around Tabor, and then one other half block that needs some repair. The half block that needs to be replaced is because it's undersized. It's an old KDOT system from when that was still a highway, and we have 30-inch running through Tabor. And it hits a point in front of the old dorms on the south side of D Street, where for half a block, it drops back down to 24-inch. And then it goes back up to 30. So if you ever noticed, when under a really big rain, when you're pulling into Ampride, There's water bubbling up out of about 3 grates on the south side of D, and that's why. Because it goes from 30 chokes down to 24 and you just can't take the water. So we needed to replace half a block of 24 to 30.
And what about Lincoln Street coming off the auditorium? Where that turns Lincoln Street into a lake.
Yeah, we didn't address that with the plan. As far as coming up with a solution for that, because I don't know if there's a good solution other than putting a pump in
Putting a pump in.
on Tabor's side and pump it down to the storm system. The only other thing we could do is extend the storm system that comes off the D, extend it a block and a half north.
Long-term, anytime you put something mechanical in.
Yeah.
Yeah, not great, but
Elevation wise, we should be able to extend the pipes, but I guess we could list that on the plan if you wanted us to include
Sure
that.
seems like it should have been on there.
I'll add that one then, Lou.
I appreciate it.
Then the other one is on the plan is over on the other side of Tabor, C Street. The half block east where there's an alley.
Yeah.
So all that water coming down Adam turns the corner at C and parts of it, some of it that comes off Tabor hits that alley and then has to go through 3 yards to get to the old KDOT box.
Isn't there is there a house that's right there that they're planning on tearing down?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
We're gonna have to come up with a very creative solution there. And Dale and I have custom discussed that area multiple times because that alley has a sanitary sewer main,
Mhm.
a sanitary sewer force main.
It's
It's
just like-
got 3 different telecoms. There's just no way we're gonna be able to put a stormwater main down that alley. So what is the solution? If we're almost gonna have to go with a pump system eventually there. And maybe
know they're
we'll
wanting
kind of deal with Tabor to get a small corner of where that house is or that lot. To where we can put in a small detention or collection well to then pump.
I think their plan was to put a parking lot there, isn't that what I understand?
It's changed a couple
long
times.
term,
I'm
I
not
think
sure.
so. but-
Long term probably, but
So,
who knows?
yeah, that's the other one that's. We know we've got a problem with, and every time a big rain happens, all 3 of those yards.
Yep.
Get some pretty significant water right up to their back doors. I know Dale's, since I've been here now, I know Dale's been in there twice and cleaned out that alley. And the one time I know we hauled out, we took out about 1.5 feet of sediment in through it just to make it flow again. So. Otherwise on the stormwater, it's one of the things that we have for you, and I can't remember. Well, I'll make sure I include it in the report I send, but we've also we go out and we inventory or show which blocks and which parts of town drain to which out of town locations. So you can kind of see by color which direction things go and where our breakover points are. And I gotta give the city, over 100 years credit. They, of course, most of it is just the actual lay of the land, but sometimes you had control by which street you could send which direction, how you built things. And it's all pretty even. We don't have 2/3 of town going in one direction. We're sending stuff north, east, and south. So it does a nice balance, so. And then we do have a few little things out in the industrial park that we'd like to fix. We do have that one set of tubes that is under, come up point. Sorry, Lou.
No worries.
They had the gravel road that goes in the backside. Right here, there's a set of tubes because this drains straight across here. Right here, there's a set of tubes and that are concrete. And one of them is cracked and it's starting to cave in. So we're probably gonna have to replace that one on the shorter term because traffic's just gonna keep eating away at it. So that might be something that's sooner rather than later. But that was the only other pipe issue that we came up with. So I will get a revision to this and I do need couple notes here about what you wanted me to add, especially to the storm sewer.
So I know like the streets and the trails, we've applied for grants on that. Is there grants for this water, the two big water projects too?
Since it's all distribution system, there's no grants for water and sewer. There's loan forgiveness with KDHE, and I guess there is grants with USDA. I'm not sure how big of a grant you would qualify for with USDA. That's always an option when we get to that point, especially doing a bigger project.
Yeah, and those just dwarf the rest of these
Oh, yes.
projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, so KDHE does not do grants, they just do loan forgiveness. That's at, like on your water treatment plant.
Yeah.
You're getting loan forgiveness. That's KDHE's version of a grant. But distribution systems, where you're not getting a notice of violation because you're not, that usually. Usually there's nothing out there for that. They save all that free money for when you have a quality issue, usually. In your case, it's not quality, it's just they're old and falling apart.
Yeah, these are just distribution. I mean, then the issue isn't any kind of production issue. I mean, that's actually.
And in these
Said.
particular lines, I asked Morgan, it's not like we're having chlorine residual issues even in these. It's just, you get some discoloration, but you're just getting breaks.
Mhm.
And we're just having.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time
Yes, a lot
on
of
these,
time.
these areas. but-
Especially the three dark blue, that's why they're by themselves in that first project, because that, they're probably spending more time on those three than everything else in the system.
Hmm.
Right now.
And these are, and then I would say these are estimates, and presumably that these are all contractor driven projects. So if we were able to, well, I'm not saying we are, but we have some experience with replacing our own lines. That would significantly reduce the costs, but the time, you got to balance it out with time.
Yeah.
So,
The worst part about on those dark blue lines, you think about it, you're talking about Birch. and That's a heavy residential area. So honestly, if you want the least impact to both the consumer and the staff, you basically hire somebody to come in and bore it, because they'd be in and out on Birch. It'd take probably 2 weeks to bore that, and you got to do all the hookups, of course, but I mean, it's just, you're not impacting every driveway in every yard.
Right.
So. Unfortunately, from the city side, you guys had open cut, and it's gonna just take longer and tie more people up for longer. So it's a risk reward situation. You gotta weigh it when you start looking at it. But the dark blue ones could be done in-house, like the line over to the old tower, that one's a little
That's
more
pretty
wide open. So not near as difficult to do that half block. What was the other one? It was on the other side of town. It was, it was over, Adams, which we need to do that one before we do the street. So with the new Tabor dorm tied on, that's actually in a new line section, because it's just south of B. But just north of that new dorm in that intersection is where it turns to the old line.
So did we get turned down on that street grant?
It has not been announced yet.
Okay,
But if we do get that street grant, the time to do the water line would be.
Then we have the
after
street
that.
out.
So.
Which would actually make it, all of a sudden now, if the street's out, we could set it up in that design so that the city could actually replace it while the street's open. That makes it a lot easier,
Way simpler.
Yeah, we still have the services, but then the city could actually, since we're gonna have the street out, you could open cut, trench the service lines across, and we wouldn't have to bore anything then. Which. That 3 blocks, there's not near as many houses, there's not near as many connections either. And about to be a couple less down there on the Tabor end.
Yep.
Take the dorms out, so.
that it?
That's it for me.
Any questions? I actually have a question that hasn't anything to do with this, but since you're here, I've had several citizens inquire as to why we have some new city limit and or urban boundary signs out on Highway 56 that seem to be mislocated. I know KDOT contracted with some company to put in
I'll have to go
new
look at it.
signage. But on the west side, that sign where it says city limit is too far west.
Pull up just any one of those mats. maps, Matt, please, sorry.
City boundary, isn't that what it says on it?
Yeah,
It
something like
says city
that.
limit on
It
that
is
one.
city limits.
The one on the
Just-
east, it says urban boundary.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like,
Right,
what?
it's in the blue dash. Okay, so you can see the blue dash line.
Right.
Old, or move, there you go. So, yes, right,
It is about
yeah,
at
right,
least 500 yards west of there.
yeah, that's the city limits on that side.
Yeah. It's well,
And then
well,
on this
well
end,
west of there.
we actually, that is kind of screwy, because we'd actually have. If they marked it appropriately, you could actually end up with 3 city limit signs out there, because we actually crossed the highway twice. It's just on the other side of the industrial park,
Right.
but then there's that one farmstead. Oh, yeah. And no, it's even on further. Oh, here we go, right here. See, we could actually, it goes right here, and then it comes down and does this. But then at this next intersection, it jumps back across. And it has to do with how KDOT acquired the right of way for the property for that new piece. But because this is not in city limits, when we did that adjustment a couple of years ago, they did not let us take this one and move it clear out here, because we would have created an island that wasn't in the city limits. So that's why it comes across right here.
And that's what the one that says urban boundary.
Yeah, it should say there, but urban boundary.
And it's
I'll
out
talk to
further,
Joe.
it's out further.
It's out further.
Yeah,
It's
it's
probably
way out
closer
there.
to
Yeah.
co-op's facilities right
Yeah,
here.
that might be why they said urban boundary, because it's not in the city limits and.
I will ask the question of Joe why they're
I just saw
labeled as such and why they got put where they did.
I appreciate it. It's just kind of a weird thing, you know, that
You're saying over
there's-
here, it's
it's,
not
oh,
even.
It's
yeah,
way-
it's further-
yeah,
it's
it's-
farther out than what on that picture.
We'll ask.
Urban boundary different than.
Well, I just thought there
That
should
is
be some
strange.
consistency, you would think, between city limit and urban boundary
How-
Yeah, I've
how
never heard
urban
of
is
that.
it?
I've never heard of that.
relative to what?
Right.
I was gonna say urban boundary, you see more of those signs like up around Johnson County, Wyandotte County, and I wonder if it has up there something to do with the way their government's. I've never heard of that term being used.
Yeah, we were actually coming back last weekend and I saw it. I'm like.
I will ask.
Yeah,
Lou,
I'd be interested to know why.
I'm gonna
Wouldn't
guess
be a
that's something.
count.
I'm sure some of those property owners out west would not want to be paying city taxes.
That wouldn't be a county.
They don't pay it anyway, because it's just paid out right away, so they're really not in. We could actually declare the highway clear out to K-15 city limits without getting either side of the highway in.
Hmm.
You could actually claim the highway that far. If you wanted to.
Why would you?
It doesn't benefit you either way,
Yeah. I don't want to, oh.
except,
That's
and
terrible.
except for to do projects. We have to, it has to be
Right.
inside the city
Or
limits to do
speed
one of those
traps.
projects. Or speed traps.
Jesse would love that.
Negative on the speed traps.
Okay, well, thank you. Gary.
Thank you very
I
much.
appreciate it.
And
Aren't any billboards out there to hide behind any.
Yeah, exactly.
we'll get you a revised report with us.
There's a nice Wendy's $3 breakfast deal. Billboard you could kind of hide behind if we worked at it. Okay, any other questions or comments regarding CIP? If not, we'll move on to our business section, which has Ford invoices totaling $2,261.97. Mr. Stiles.
Thank you, sir. These are all related to, I believe, street department vehicles. So these are all just regular services. We do have one police car, 2015 Ford in there. They're just basic service rotation, oil changes, rotations, that sort of thing. So yeah, there's several vehicles on there, but we serviced, looks like some police department vehicles and a couple street department vehicles.
Any questions regarding these invoices? Hearing none, and accept a motion to approve the Ford invoices for payment.
So moved.
Councilman Driggers moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilman Lowen seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, all those abstaining.
Abstain.
Okay, motion carries. We're now into our discussion section, and we will be talking about our 2024 budget preliminary discussion.
So that we can share with our friends online. Okay. Okay, so it's kind of hard to believe we're already talking budget for 2024, but we are. This is kind of one of the nuances of Kansas state budget laws, that you have to adopt it in the middle of the summer, year before, for the next year. So we've kind of started this process already, and I just want to walk you through the way we kind of frame this and how it looks. So the first thing, everyone always talks about the main function, one of the main functions of the budget, aside from setting our expenditures, is setting property tax levy. And so I think it's always good to talk about what the property tax looks like here in Hillsboro and in Marion County. So the city levy is 42.621. It's about a little less than a quarter of what the total tax bill is. The county's got the majority. They're at 74, almost 75 mils, just short of 75. That's 41% of the tax bill. The school district is 61 mils, a little over 61, almost 62 mils, which is a little over a third. Would say that not all of that is local option. So 20 mils of that is the state levy. The state levies for that. And then the rest is tied directly to USD 410. Then the state levies they're 1.5 mils. So they get their 1%. Extension, we have an extension district here, Marion County. They do 2.7 mils. All that added up is 183.61 mils. Comparatively by counties, we're pretty high for property taxes in Marion County. I think a lot of that is probably attributed to the county's levy, and I don't do their budget. I don't dig into their budget, but a lot of it, obviously that's the biggest chunk. So I can kind of see what that looks like. And then from an actual property tax impact, what that looks like, so median home value here is $90,300. So you're going to pay $1,900 and a little over $1,900 in property tax on that typical home. Of those dollars, the city gets 438 and 54 cents. The county gets the majority again at $781. The school district gets 648. You're getting a bargain with the state at $15.58, and the extension services at $22.55. So that's kind of where that tax dollar goes for the average house. And you can apply that to your own home if you wanted to, up or down, depending on what that is. But those are kind of the percentages, and that's sort of how it breaks out.
Who controls the extension?
Extension is governed by a board. So I think it's a 3-county extension. Three or four counties here.
They just changed it here a while back.
Yeah, it's a couple years.
Organized districts.
So it is, it used to be just Marion County. And then it went to a district, which is really common now for extensions to do that districting. So they have their own tax levy and can levy it through their own board. They have elections. You could run for the district board seat for Marion County if you wanted to. Yeah, so that's kind of how it gets governed. The levy comparison, I always caution people not to compare cities because they're not the same. We are, the size, the tax base, the services we provide are completely different, but inevitably everybody always wants to do it. So I'm just going to jump out and do it anyway. So the city of Hillsboro there, 42.621, Marion is 72, Peabody 73, Burns. Durham is less, but obviously it's a different level of service, different level of community, just totally different. Florence, Gossel, you can kind of see where everybody sort of lines out within the county, pull all those cities. You want to look at like an actual peer city that has similar size tax base, provides similar services, although not 100%, similar population. We have really 3 in the state. Norton, city of Norton, which is kind of northwest, right near it's like 30-40 miles from the Nebraska border. They pretty similar size, pretty similar tax base. They provide similar services. They're at 64.851. Kingman is one of our peer cities. They're also, they have EMS. We're tied up in that, but they get an offset from the county. They run the EMS, but they get a county offset. They're also an electric provider. They're KPP member. So we feel pretty comfortable saying that they're pretty close. And then Osage City is probably the most direct. they are like a twin to us in a lot of ways. So, and they're at 57. So if you want to think about how we rank or compare, we're in relatively good shape. I would say compared to everybody else. That's even taking in consideration the large chunk of property that Tabor has that is not taxed. So that's kind of the mill levy compare. Any questions on that?
I think my question would be, what are their counties like?
What are their counties like? I'd have to pull that information. Yeah, I can tell you that Marion County is one of the higher. So their overall tax burden, I don't think any of those fall into a community college district either. I don't think so. So
those three.
their overall tax bills are probably lower
Mhm.
or comparable.
But I think most people would probably think of it as their whole bill.
Right,
Not
yeah.
Hillsboro's portion or Marion's,
Yeah.
County's portion, but the whole bill.
Unfortunately, we don't get to.
I know.
Yeah, we don't get to control their parts,
I
but
get it.
yeah, when you say that is true though, when you start looking at it and making a business case, that's where you're at. I mean, that's what it is. So
It was interesting, kind of went through this exercise with the high school senior government classes last year. And I asked the students, I said, so what's the one thing we could do to reduce the mill levy, have the most impact on it? And believe it or not, somebody in the back of the room raised their hand, and said more people.
Yeah.
And that's exactly right. That's exactly what we need. So anytime, we like to think, that we're doing a good job and we're trying really hard. I know we are to keep a handle on our finances here in Hillsboro and be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. But every time that Marion County loses a person or doesn't attract somebody, it costs every one of us. And that's the sad fact of it. So, I don't know what that tells you, but what it tells me is that we still have to figure out ways to cooperate, collaborate with the rest of the cities and people in Marion County to figure it out so that we don't continue to lose population.
okay, so looking at our 24 timeline, May, we're going to start, we've already kind of started drafting expenditures. We'll really get into that in the next few weeks. We'll have a quick discussion tonight about priorities, but I think maybe we need to slate that in for the next meeting too, to have a little bit more discussion about what that looks like. We have started to get a little bit of information from the county. Usually that's what we're waiting on. In June, we'll get that assessed valuation estimate and the revenue neutral rate that needs to be to us by June 15th. Usually it shows up a little earlier than that. Hopefully we'll be in a better spot than June 15th, but we'll see. June 20th, we'll review revenue estimates based on our county data. We ought to have a fairly rough idea kind of what we're looking at overall. First meeting in July is where I've got it pinned to do just a discussion of the first draft. We'll probably want to be we're going to be talking about resolution for exceeding the revenue neutral rate. I'm guessing probably we will. I'm just guessing at this point. I don't know for sure, but I think that's probably where we're going to end up. July 18th, we'll do another change and review that. And at that point, we'll have to adopt the R&R resolution if that's something we need to do. That's got to be done before the 20th of July. Assuming that we do that, then our dates kind of shift because of the state law there. And September 5th would be our budget hearing if that was the case. If not, everything goes great. We don't need to exceed the revenue neutral rate. We're looking at August 15th. So that's kind of the timeline when we're looking at. Always a good time to talk about our strategic plan priorities. Just want to keep those front and center. We're working on, we did a review at the last meeting, but these are kind of the goals, and I think it would be good to, in this timeline, to sandwich in a time to talk specifically about this, because there's going to be some funding decisions that have to be kind of tied to this at some point here. We've done a lot of things here, but if we're going to be moving forward with items on the CIP, if we're going to be talking about fire station, which I know are priorities, then we need to have a conversation about how we're going to pay for that and kind of how it's going to look. So that's something we'll need to factor in. And then just kind of looking at what I'm making some assumptions on priorities, at least that's the operationally what we're looking at for when we're putting this thing together. I'm going to assume we want to continue to keep the mill under 43 mills. We've actually reduced it over the last few years and holding tight about 43 or 42 and a half. We're going to try to keep it under 43. Employee wages, there's some things there we need to continue to be, I don't want to say aggressive, but at least meet the market where it's at. Cost of living, we'll probably look at something with that again. Since we had this conversation last year at this time, cost of living has gone up according to the consumer price index, another 5%. So I don't want to get real far behind, but I don't know if we're going to be able to match that either. I don't know if that makes any sense. We do have scheduled in this year's budget to do a merit-based bonus situation of 2%. We improved that for this year's budget. So maybe we want to look at something like that again, or maybe just a wage adjustment. However, we're going to do that. We probably need to tie something to merit because we're getting better and more consistent with our employee evaluations. And then we need to look at maybe some market increases in some positions. And Lou and I were talking about this earlier. You know, what the way it has worked with the council and the city administrator's position is that you generally have been, you know, saying we set the budget. This is where the budget is. And then, you know, the city administrator can kind of adjust wages underneath that wherever we see we need to do that. I just want to make sure that we're still comfortable with that because I don't want to get too far out and be, you know, making adjustments or doing different things. But also, you know, if you don't want to be involved with that at all, then that's fine too. I just want to have that conversation and see where we're at. You know, it's one of those things I don't want to get too far out in front of where we're needing to be. But there are some places where I know we need to do some adjusting just because we're behind and we could potentially lose people. We've got good people now and I want to keep them. So I just want to get a feel for where you're at on that. And yeah, I guess that's just kind of where I want to start that conversation.
Are you thinking like starting like a committee or something or?
No, I mean, right now, the how we do it is, you know, you basically set the budget and say, okay, Mr. Administrator, go hire the people you need and do the job.
I think that's what we need to do. We need to keep our good people there.
In the conversation that Matt and I had, I want to manage results. I don't want to manage process.
Right.
You know, that's what we've hired him to do is
That's right.
to manage the process. And, you know, so we set the budget and then we hold him and our city staff accountable to that budget. And, you know, how we shuffle the deck a little bit to make sure that budget gets met. You know, that's what we hired Matt to do. And, you know, I don't want to be in that minutia. I don't want to be down in those weeds myself.
Okay. All right. Well, if
We trust you.
okay, fair enough. I appreciate the confidence and the trust, and we'll manage the budget and keep moving forward. So for 24, we're looking at the expenditure side. We're still seeing, you know, effects of inflation and supply chain stuff. We still are waiting on some transformers that we've ordered before. There's still issues in different areas, and it's still unpredictable. We're going to have continued inflationary impacts, although there is some softening in places. So I don't know. I don't want to read the tea leaves. I'm not an economist, but you know, that could be showing us something that, you know, overall, I don't want to use the word recession or I don't deal in those terms, but if that happens, then we may see some letting up of some of that. But right now we're still looking, you know, gas, diesel fuel. We're still going to be budgeting those on the higher side just to be conservative.
Right.
If they come back, great, perfect, that'd be fine. But we need to keep that in mind as we move forward. We did get our health insurance renewal rates today, and they are ugly. They're straight up ugly. So we're going to try to figure out how to manage that. And you know, we've kind of set last year to start moving back toward the policy, which is that employees pay 50% of the difference between what the single person's coverage is on a family plan or a police spouse, whatever that is. That was because we got distorted when we had everybody leaving. We had, 7 retirements. The workforce is dramatically different than it was even a year ago. So we're trying to move back toward that, and then we're going to be looking at a pretty significant increase in a couple areas too. So we're probably going to have to do some plan adjustments. We're going to try to make that as easy on people as possible, because that affects your take home. I mean, I get it, and that's part of having competitiveness too. So we'll try to figure out what that is. You'll have that. We'll be looking at that next meeting for the renewal. So we're still running a few numbers, trying to figure out what that's going to look like.
Could you look at anybody on the backside differently than Blue Cross?
We did. It wasn't good there either. Actually, United was they had 109% increase in premium if we went with them. That's not going to work. So we looked at kind of where we were at. The plan that we're on this year, we've really had a very good plan, and it was we did excellent on this year's plan, but they're discontinuing that plan, and so now we're back into this banded tier stuff. And so we're looking at options and kind of seeing what that ends up being. So there may be some adjustments on what the benefits look like. There's going to be adjustments on what people have to pay. We're just going to try to figure out what the least impactful is and still keep us in a good financial position. So that's a tough one. That is a straight market problem we're having. So and then we've got a couple of things out there. We did decide to add senior center funding. We're going to want to make sure we can either continue that or have a discussion of what that looks like. The Tabor, the Center for Entrepreneurship, funding that. We've got an agreement with that. That'll be up this year. The mayor and I met with Dr. Jansen and kind of talked about what maybe the future looks like with that. I don't know how much we want to dive into that at all.
I don't
at this
think we're
point.
ready to get into a
So-
lot of detail yet.
But those are things we need to consider if we're going to be moving forward. And there may be some other things tied to the strategic plan that you want to look at. That's kind of a new area for us, funding some of those things. So continued equipment replacement as possible. I mean, you looked at the list of capital improvements, the list of equipment improvements is equally as long and daunting. So we need to kind of pick and choose our spots there as to for what's the most impactful. And then, the capital improvement plan, what do we want to invest in improvements? From a cash perspective, I can tell you that $7 million in 2029 is not probably on the table as it sits right now. That's several years away, but managing that and trying to find other sources of money. Darren mentioned the airport grant. That's a great one. That's a 90%. We've got the Adam Street project out there. So
Yeah, and that one will come in at 75% if we can get it. So it, knocks that number down quick on that planning.
it makes it reasonable to deal with. I mean, there's still probably we're probably still going to need to borrow some money to do some of those things if we want to move forward with them. The mayor and I talked about the debt service schedule and the plan we've put together to manage that. So those are things we're going to have to look at too. We're actually sitting pretty good in that position. Greg Varnberg from Raymond James has set us up pretty well with a plan for that. So I feel pretty good there, but
And we timed it okay too.
yeah, the timing's fine. It works out. And it helps that the local option sales tax is doing really well. And so there's money there to help some of that. We may end up looking at some of those things too, how that looks. So, yeah. And then utility rates, we've done a lot with utility rates. I don't think there's any large increases to go, but if we're going to start talking about what capital improvements look like, then there may be some things we need to address in that. Overall, I think we're performing pretty well in the utility rates, but when we start layering in more capital improvement projects, those things need to be addressed somehow. So those are kind of the priorities that I see and the things that I think of when we start putting in budget. We start looking at expenditure side. I just want to throw those things out there and make sure I'm not completely way off base. And if there's other things that we need to be thinking about, now's a good time to just start spitballing those while we start drawing in the initial set of expenditures. Feel pretty good about that.
We did also talk about maybe having, asking Greg to come back and kind of giving us an update before we get too deep into the budget process and help us kind of get our minds back around our debt service as we're talking about this stuff. So
Also, reserves are in there somewhere. Yeah, try to keep building those reserves, especially the utility side. That's one we think we need to be particularly mindful of. We're like, obviously, we're doing a large lining project with the sewer. It has a very healthy cash reserve right now, but that'll go down as we draw down to do that project. So that's why it was built up initially. So it, makes sense, but those are things to be aware of as we draw those down.
comments? Questions? Okay, next item up is item H. We have an executive session. And could I get one of the council members to make that motion?
Sure. I move the city council recess into executive session for the purpose of preliminary discussion of the acquisition of real property pursuant to KSA 75-4319B6 for a period of 20 minutes. The executive session will include the city administrator and city attorney. The open meeting will resume at
7:46,
7:46.
or no, excuse me,
No.
7:56.
56. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're now in executive session.
Shut the door.
I was like, where does he go?
Where you go, Mark?
Yeah.
Do I have time to run the rest?
Thank you.
You can run it.
I'll get you when we come back in session.
You can't. Just go.
Let's go.
What time?
Okay, we are back in open session. Let the records show that there was no action taken during executive session. So we are now back in open session and we are ready for the city administrator's report. Mr. Stiles.
Thank you, sir. So we've got several things here. Talk a little bit about the KMU conference, and some really interesting things about federal funding, specifically about electrical things, energy efficiency, and they also have a real big push on EV chargers. I don't know that we need to get too deep into that part of it, but I don't see how that's going to work exactly. But there is some opportunity maybe for some offset stuff with solar, which might be interesting. So might pursue some of that. You got a base grant letter there. We got denied for the second round of that. 500 applications and $2 billion in requests. So not super shocked by that, I guess. I will say that Peabody, downtown Peabody got 1.5 million. So that's great for them. That's cool. They got 1.5 million to do some historic renovation downtown. So that's cool. But it was tipped off that there is another they called it a fire station grant out there that may be coming down the pipe. So there may be some opportunity for that. I'll keep looking for that. Financial report, got that for March, and we're going to tie up April here for you in the next meeting, I think. So then we'll go back to doing more of the dashboard style reports so that you can have that, you can kind of look at what we got there. We had a few kind of oddball things in the March report because we just got the proceeds from the loan that for the equipment. So that kind of makes it a little weird, but that'll come back out. We just got funded for that loan yesterday. So that'll come back out, I guess, in the May bill. Health insurance savings report. I know we talked about the ugliness of our renewal, but the plan we have now continues to do really well. So we're kind of moving forward with that. We've got 118,000 in the bank for the claims reserve and done really well this year. Again, next year's not going to look that good, so we'll have to kind of manage that. Sales tax report, April's distribution was 82,000, still looking pretty good. We're still 14% above the same time period for last year. And again, last year was one of the best, was the best year we had on history. So you may not know it as kind of a budgetary thing, but we take the first $150,000 that goes to the city's general sales tax, and we put that into the bond and interest to pay debt service. So you may not know that, but that's kind of how it's always been structured. And so we met that in March, and so we're starting to see that money come into the general fund now. So just as that goes. Got a couple other things. The Grid X event, which is it's a really cool tabletop simulation for that KPP puts on. It's about physical threats to the electric infrastructure. So it's a tabletop exercise. It's really fun. We did it 2 years ago, and they have it coming up again this year, November 14th and 15th. And we're putting together a Hillsboro team. So if you're interested, elected officials are welcome to attend. It kind of goes through a simulated emergency with the electric. That last time it was a terrorist attack on our electrical infrastructure. It was really interesting. And then you have to kind of figure out ways to how you would address that, you know, based on your utility. It's a tabletop exercise. So it's really a good exercise. We're looking forward to doing that. And again, November 14th and 15th, you got 6 months to plan. So
It's in McPherson.
It's in McPherson. Yeah.
Training Center.
So we got that. That's a cool event. If you can come, I'd encourage it. It's a 2-day deal though, so a little bit of a time commitment. I wanted to let everybody know we got an employee recognition lunch. We're going to do that after our monthly safety training on the 19th. It's going to be at the Scout House, so y'all are welcome to come if you want to have lunch with us. We do those, I don't know, quarterly-ish, just to say thanks to the employees. I think we're grilling hamburgers or doing something like that, and we just have a meal together and say, hey, we're doing good. Let's keep up the good work. Talked about the health plan, and I just want to let everybody know I'm going to be on vacation, May 22 through 26, week after school lets out, right before Labor Day, Memorial Day. So I will be we're pretty much unreachable. I'll be on a cruise ship. So call Danielle if you have a problem. Okay. That is everything I had, sir.
Okay, any questions? Okay, we're now at our final public comment set opportunity. Is there anybody that would like to address the council? Hearing none, we'll close that public comment and go to council comments. Councilman Driggers,
Nothing tonight.
Councilman Lowen,
No.
Councilman McCarty, Councilman By.
2 things. One, fire truck. When are we getting?
I'd love to tell you. They say it's built. It's sitting on a lot in Texas is what I was told. So
Awesome.
once we get it, the outfitter actually has everything built. It should be about 3 weeks after we get it. So not here yet.
The other thing, I will be out of the country from June 14th to the 23rd. I'll be in Bermuda. So if you need me, I will not be available. I'll also be on a cruise ship.
Excellent. Not the same one, probably.
Probably.
Not.
I'm excited.
Is that a Ford trip?
No,
Oh, okay.
unfortunately not. It's a grandma trip is what it is.
Okay. And I will add to that, I will be out of town for our next meeting, but we'll be online as I was the last time I was out of town. So I'll be out of town on business, be reaching out from Chicago land at our next meeting.
Stay safe.
Well, I'm not going into Chicago. I'm staying way out in the suburbs. So, yeah. And then I will be on vacation that week of is it the 17th of June?
Yeah.
Yeah, week of June 17th, I'll be attending the American Public Power Association conference and then taking a few days off on the backside of that. So I will need you to chair that meeting. That would be the 18th.
It would be June 20th. Yeah.
Hopefully we have a
We
quorum.
may have an issue with that.
I'll be gone and he'll be gone.
So
Unless I can somehow find Wi-Fi in the middle of nowhere.
we may need to reschedule that one.
Yeah, okay.
No.
That works. Okay, are there any other comments or business that needs to come before the council? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.